Welcome back to the Twin Cities Carry Live show. Joining me tonight is Jim, and only Jim. AJ had, I don't know, stuff and things and whatever. I didn't care.
He said he was tired of us.
Well, I mean,
Didn't like talking to us anymore, didn't want to look at us anymore.
That's going to be an issue for him because we make up currently 40% of his company. So he might want
to look at it, maybe more.
Yeah, he might want to do something about that. I don't know, whatever. I don't take corrective criticism well either, so. Yeah, so it's me and Jim tonight. We were supposed to have a fill-in instructor. He bailed, so yeah, whatever. What are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, I had a whole long, glorious intro worked up for him and everything, and
yeah, it literally said joining me tonight is Jim and Jason. That was my intro. I put a lot of effort into it tonight.
I actually did put some effort in.
You did?
I had an intro worked out for him and everything.
Oh, I'm curious. What'd you have? Oh, I want to know.
I'll tell you later when we're offline. I'm not wasting time with it now.
Yeah. It's been a weird week, right?
Jason's a schmo. He ain't here.
Yeah, we can talk all of the shit we want about him because he cannot defend himself, which is the best time to talk shit about somebody. It's a wonder people don't like me. It's been a weird week, right? It's been hot and sticky, and well, it's been hot. Now it's going to get sticky.
I was on the phone with Joel over the weekend. He was doing his guard duty down south, where it was a solid 10 degrees cooler than we were.
So the in-laws are in town from Texas, and they were a little confused because it's hotter here than where they live in Texas. And I told them to go back to Texas because they brought the heat with them. I don't know. As we know, there's something about the heat that brings out the crazy in people, right? Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why it happens, especially when you make people stay in their homes for a year and a half, and then you get, heat as you let everybody out of the home. It brings the crazy out. We got a story, the second one we're going to talk about, which is kind of like there's some crazy there. So,
Well, I'd like to start with some good news. For anybody who's really been paying attention to our broadcasts, crickets.
Right, definitely not me.
You'll notice that I'm back to the old background. I've rebuilt my laptop. It's now functioning. Hey, there's Schmo.
We didn't talk a lot of shit, just a little shit. So
That's fine. My computer decided it's a good time to update right now. So
don't get me started on the loss of control over that with Windows 10. But anyway, all right. So joining us tonight is Jason. The story that I was going to tell is AJ started the company in late 2015 with the idea that if he could make the cost of his hunting equipment every year, he'd call that a win. Well, pretty soon he had to bring on more people. And finally, later on in 2016, he was looking for somebody else to bring the company up to 5 people. Jason and I were both interviewed that day along with 6 other guys. And at the end of the day, he said, I got to have both of them. The other 3 guys have moved on to be firemen, policemen, and 911 dispatchers. They don't have the flexibility in their full-time job to do this anymore. So Jason and I are the oldest guys in the company, short of the owner.
You got to really question the judgment of hiring you two.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good thing we're a small company.
Anyway, at the time, Jason was both a bail bond recovery agent and the general manager of Permar Security for the state of Minnesota. He's given up that Permar job, and now he's director of security for Metropolitan State University. Jason, thanks for joining us. We were worried it wasn't going to happen there for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's hot out, so it's better to be inside.
That's what I was saying. I was saying that the heat brings the crazy out in people. There's something about it, like, it gets to people.
Yeah, I had just started talking about computers a couple of months ago. My laptop bricked, and so I've been using a different computer. I was just telling everybody, I'm back to using a laptop now. I've rebuilt the thing. I put a new hard drive in it, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems like work. I'd have just gotten a new one.
This is a whole lot cheaper.
Fair enough.
Plus, I was able to go from a spinning hard drive to an SSD. So it's a little faster than it was before, too.
Nice. All right. So I didn't put a ton of effort into the show notes and the story, so I do apologize ahead of in advance for that. There's a couple things I wanted to touch on. First thing we have up is the Firearms Policy Coalition is part of a lawsuit against Minnesota looking to strike down a ban on handgun carry for adults over 18 yet under 21. So we're pretty familiar with it. People in Minnesota who wish to get a permit to carry need to be at least 21 years of age. If you want to buy a handgun, if you want to purchase one, you need to be at least 21 years of age. You can be gifted one under the age of 21, but you have to be over 18 to actually own it. So, and I have the press release pulled up here. So this is from
Shane,
the Firearms.
I'm getting a little feedback. Do you have that turned off on your microphone?
I do. That's why. Also, you're not going to get feedback because I have the headphones on. So it'd be really, really hard to get feedback there.
Yeah, just to add one thing though, that applies to ammunition as well. You can. That's one of the things I say in class. If you want to gift your 18 or 19-year-old a gun, you can, but just keep in mind you're committing to buying all their ammunition until they turn 21 as well.
Well, so that's why you
can't buy it.
That's why you gift it to a nephew, and it's their problem. It's their parents' problems. All right, so real quick, the FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, on the heels of its historic victory last Friday, securing a post-trial judgment and permanent injunction against California's ban on so-called assault weapons, Firearms Policy Coalition today announced that FPC law filed a new federal Second Amendment lawsuit seeking to restore the rights of adults under 21 years of age to carry loaded, operable arms in public for self-defense. And for other lawful purposes. The case is Kristen Worth, etc., versus John Harrington, etc. Yeah, I'm getting that feedback real bad, and I muted you both, and it's definitely something on my end, but that makes no sense. Anyways, long story short, FPC, in conjunction with Second Amendment Foundation, Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, have filed suit in Minnesota against the Commissioner of Public Safety, who is John Harrington, and also the sheriffs of Washington County, Mille County, and another county. I don't have it pulled up right now, unfortunately.
Is that only for personal carry? So it's not going to affect, law enforcement officers that are under 21 or military? Is that correct?
Correct. This is specifically targeted at the permit to carry situation. I believe officers under the age of 21 are allowed to carry, are they not? It's not my world.
Usually, yes. I'm just wondering if the terminology in there is just for those that are in between 18 and 21 for protective reasons. And it sounded like that's what you said, but I just wanted to double check that so we're not already moving towards unarmed officers because they're not old enough.
I don't even want to go down that road. We should not have unarmed officers, period. So, yeah, no, this is three private citizens in conjunction. Obviously, they have a Minnesota attorney, but also in conjunction with, like I said, Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, Second Amendment Foundation, and the Firearms Policy Coalition. Are basically, they're suing for the fact that, look, they can vote, they can go to jail, they can be arrested, they can go serve the military, they can be law enforcement, they can do all of these things legally because our society has agreed that at 18 you are an adult. Yet we have this extra additional, nope, sorry, you're not quite an adult, you don't quite get to protect yourself. There was one section I thought was really interesting, or I appreciated, I should say. So the main plaintiff that's listed, Worth, although plaintiff Worth can vote, serve on a jury, hold public office, marry, sign legally binding contracts, join the armed forces, and be held fully accountable before the law for criminal acts to the point of being executed. A plaintiff, Minnesota statute bars plaintiff worth from obtaining a permit to carry handguns in public throughout this state. Like, I mean, does that not say it all? Like, you can literally do all of this, but we're not going to let you protect yourself. It's the most, it's ridiculous and I think dumb. So it's not often we have actually Minnesota specific issues. So, hey guys, I got to step away for just 1 second. If you guys talk about that real quick, I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's great that we've got something going. I don't know that I would pick this as the most important issue that I'd like to see changed, but just as that I'm a big believer in the slippery slope from the idea of not giving away any rights, I think it could also apply the other way as well. So if we can get something more, get closer to shall not be infringed, I think it makes the next win a little easier as well. So, whatever they go after, I hope it works out because that just sets the table better for more victories in the future.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I told him my dad was stopping over. I told him the front door was unlocked. It was not, so he's been standing out there for like 10 minutes in the heat because I'm not a good son, apparently. So
I believe it.
Yeah, right. What are you going to do? So, yeah, I don't know what you guys mentioned, but I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I was just talking about the slippery slope idea and how it could work potentially both ways. So if we can win on this, it might make getting something else down the road even easier.
Yeah, I read through like the entire like legal document. It was like 26 pages. They go on to talk about the statistics for crime for the 18 to 21-year-old age group being significantly less than that of the 21 to like 25 age group, which makes sense, right? That also really pointing out like, the, see if I can actually pull it up here.
Did they discuss the idea at all about how the permit to carry subset of society is like the most law-abiding group there is? We're literally 1/6 as likely to commit a crime as an active duty police officer.
No, that I did not come across that. They really pointed out near the end of the document of, and I can't find it here, of course, now that I'm looking as I'm talking. Yeah, here we go. So in 2018, women perpetrated only 17.6% of violent crime, whereas men perpetrated 86.3%, and women were victims of 57.7% of violent crimes. Which, I mean, despite all the shit that's going on in society, there's some issues. Men are more predisposed to violence and live under more of a threat of violence, or at least a situation turning violent, than women do. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about women being the recipients of violent crime significantly more, especially younger women. So, only 0.13%, so 0.13% of 18 to 20-year-old women were arrested for any violent crime at all in 2019. So
what's the stage that they're in right now with this lawsuit? Did they just submit it?
Just filed it on Monday, on the 7th. So it's interesting. They go on to cite Heller in their filing, which Heller basically says the Supreme Court defined bear arms as to wear, bear, or carry upon the person or in the clothing. There's some additional case law that states that of the age of 18 is when that really takes effect. So I don't know. We're not the only state that FPC is filing in. FPC's filed in a few other states that have similar prohibitions. If I remember right, Is the 18 and 21-year-old age group kind of the issue why Minnesota and Texas don't share reciprocity, or do I have that wrong?
Yes, you have that correct. In Texas, somebody with law enforcement or police training can get a permit as early as age 18. Minnesota, in turn, said we don't want anybody under 21, so we're not going to give reciprocity to the state of Texas, at which point Texas said, well, screw you, then we're not going to honor your permit here as well.
Yeah. That's always like, in class, that's the thing I point out. I'm like, all right, you notice Texas isn't honored, which you're all wondering why Texas isn't honored because you all think Texas is the most gun-free state there is. It's not.
No, the Texans are just saying, screw you, Minnesota.
Well, I mean, the Texans...
Because the Texans, Texas is on the verge of constitutional carry for their residents.
So something I didn't pull up, and God damn, we talk about Texas a lot. This is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it's what, 10% of the population of the country. It's not an insignificant place.
Yeah, and California is like 20, and it is an insignificant place.
Yeah, California is more like an eighth of the population.
Yeah. So Texas, and I don't have it pulled up or anything. There was a bill introduced which would state basically that suppressors made in Texas by Texans to never leave Texas would not be subject to, federal law. I'm not doing it justice. It's very well written. It's very eloquent in the way it's written. But as long as it's made in Texas, never leaves Texas, made of Texas materials, Texas is not going to enforce the laws around suppressors. So no NFA, nothing like that. It's very interesting. I don't know who would ever be willing to be the test case for
all of those, like sanctuary city and sanctuary county and these they're the opposite of a preemption law.
Right.
In that they're granting freedom that is illegal at the federal level. I mean, the ATF, the FBI can still come in and charge you with stuff. So I don't know if I'd be willing to test that one.
Well, so how it's written is that it allows Texas to make the suppressors, sell it to Texas residents, and that bypasses the stamp. So you don't have to wait the 9 months for the stamp, but it can only be used and sold in Texas. But it would have to have a stamp of made in Texas. Now, this isn't good yet. If it's signed into law, it still has to go through the federal courts, which at that time it would most likely be struck down.
Correct. It's interesting. Thank you for pulling that up. At least they're doing something, right? Like
trying.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to them for putting forth the effort. We're going to lose a lot of stuff, but every time we fight, we've got a chance to win, and the more we win, the better.
Yeah. Back to the whole Minnesota thing. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are. I like that they're bringing suit. I'm not very well versed in the legal system. I think they have a good case. I think it's going to be hard to argue against people of the age of 18 to 21 not being able to carry. I mean, what are you going to really point to why an 18-year-old shouldn't be able to carry versus join the military, be charged as an adult, right? I mean, we don't let them drink until they're 21. But that's just because we wanted federal highway money. So, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? Do you think it's got a shot?
I think you said what they're going to play the most is you can't drink until you're 21. So why should you be able to carry until you're 20 unless under the supervision of law enforcement or military service? So
yeah,
it's a slippery slope. They're going to start grabbing some stuff like that. But I think they might have a chance to have that become a real thing. If you can't buy it, you shouldn't be able to carry it. That's their mantra. So if you can't buy alcohol, you shouldn't be able to drink it. So if you can't buy a firearm or a handgun, you shouldn't be able to carry it. And I think they're going to get a long ways with that. Especially
I think that's Jason. I think Jason's right. I think that's going to be the precedent for why they can be arbitrary about this, is because it's not the only thing they're arbitrary about, and we aren't objecting to that as well.
Yeah, I think you guys make a good point there.
I'll be right back. Just 1 second. Got to check.
Yeah, no worries. That's a solid point.
You know, and you know, in my previous career, I was in court testifying as an expert witness, and I saw some cases go just so contrary to the way that you think they would. Lawsuits are not cut and dried, and they don't follow logic and reason like you think they should. So predicting how a lawsuit's going to go is not any more, you know, likely than predicting what the Powerball is going to be.
Right.
You know, you just there's no method of thought that you can apply that's going to lead you to the likely conclusion.
Yeah, I will say again, I think both you and Jason have a far more extensive experience and understanding versus what I do. I do think that Firearms Policy Coalition (FPC) is. I think they have legal chops. Their director of legal affairs is a very well-known firearms attorney. I used to work for Prince Law before he took the position at FPC. I don't think they're just throwing out lawsuits to throw out lawsuits. I think
no, they've got a limited budget. It's just like we talked about last show or the show before. You know, the Supreme Court is only going to pull up the stuff that they think they're likely to overturn. Yeah. I think the FPC is only filing the stuff where they think they've got a legitimate shot of winning. Otherwise, you know, they're just throwing their limited funding away.
Right. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, they are a nonprofit organization, so. I don't know. I hope it. I hope it is an expansion of what I think should already be approved, available, and should already be law. Not even law. I don't think there should be a prohibition on it. If it's cliche, but if you're old enough to fight and serve and die for your country, well, Jesus Christ, you should be able to frickin' defend yourself. And I mean, you could probably make an argument that people of the age of 18 to 21 are more likely to be in more dangerous situations than, like, I mean, myself. I'll use myself as an experience, as a example. I go to work, I come home, I don't freaking do anything, right? Like, you know, I'm not out. I don't have a nightlife. I don't have a budding social life. I'm over that at this point. So, I don't know.
But it's one that potentially hits home with me. You know, I've got a 16-year-old daughter. To think that she might be able to defend herself in 2 years instead of 5. That's not a small thing in my mind.
Right. All right. So on to the next.
Of course, she's already taken and passed the course, even though she can't carry a gun. She went through the course when she was 14 and shot better than most of the students that day.
I'm not going to speak about how some of our students shoot. All right, so it's an interesting week. We have 2 Minnesota-based stories that I wanted to talk about. We generally don't have a ton of Minnesota-based stories, which is difficult for a firearms company trying to do a Facebook thing about Minnesota and a YouTube thing about Minnesota. Unfortunately, this next one is a little more grim and sad. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm guessing you did, but stepfather is accused of starting a gunfight that ended with a 14-year-old's death in Woodbury. Keith Dawson, 35, of St. Paul, allegedly fired several shots at an SUV outside the party as he drove by, prompting the SUV's occupants to return fire, according to a criminal complaint filed against him in Washington District Court. Long story short, his stepson, a couple other kids were at a party, a relative of the stepson's, and apparently they were getting robbed. That's what the complaint states. They reached out to the stepdad. The stepdad picked them up. Sorry, so let's get this. I want to get this exactly straight. Woodbury police responded at 10:45 p.m. Saturday to a residence on the 6100 block of Edgewood. Multiple 911 callers reported that someone had been shot. When officers arrived, they found 20 to 30 people at the scene who were attending a nearby graduation party when the shooting took place. The witness said that the shooting involved a white SUV, a dark-colored SUV, and a Kia sedan. So the stepdad was in the white SUV on his own. The kids were following in the Kia behind. The stepdad, for whatever reason, felt he needed to defend and teach a lesson to the people that rolled his kids, and got himself involved in a drive-by shooting in which his own stepson in the car behind was shot. Once he found out that his stepson was shot, he transferred him to his vehicle, tried to drive him to the hospital. Unfortunately, the 14-year-old kid died at the hospital from injuries from involved in the freaking drive-by. Like, this is just ridiculous and asinine. And I joke about the heat making people do dumb things. I don't understand this one. This one is just confusing to me. Like, why you would ever think that this is the appropriate action to take, and furthermore, something to teach your stepson and cousins. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating, and they've arrested the guy. I feel for him. I get it. Like, his kids were getting rolled, but what the hell were you thinking, dude?
Yeah, the story that I read was that the stepfather came because there was a group of kids messing with the kids, which in any of these stories, it doesn't give, the reason to even brandish a weapon. So it seems like he was the aggressor of the whole situation, and I feel he's probably going to get charged with enough things that,
right.
Yes.
So Dawson allegedly told investigators that the stepson had called him earlier in the evening and said that he and his brother were getting robbed at the graduation party by two people identified in court documents. So, and it sounds like there was like a history of these people messing with the stepson and brother. Why are we not calling the police? The police are the ones that should be responding to this situation.
Well, and I mean, pillar number 2, you're supposed to make an attempt to get the hell out of there. It doesn't sound like that was done either.
Well, this isn't a self-defense. When you're driving by, sticking the gun out the vehicle and shooting at people, it's not really a self-defense situation. I don't know that any of the pillars apply.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Is it falls apart just all over the place.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you're not supposed to be calling for reinforcements. You're supposed to be leaving.
Yeah, you should be calling the police. They're the ones trained to handle this. I don't think. I will be honest. In my opinion of the police is that we shouldn't be defunding them. In fact, we should be giving them more money to give them more training to help them to better respond in tense situations and very tense situations, stressful situations that we're, and Jason, forgive me, I don't know your background, but I know I'm not capable of responding in the situations that the police are responding in. So we should be giving them more money. We should be giving them more training. And the police should have been called to deal with this situation. You don't get to take justice into your own hands in our society. That is something our society has decided is not acceptable. And I agree with that, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah.
That gets into the defunding police and all that other discussional items that shouldn't be discussed lightly. I know that I'm on the side of funding law enforcement more to get that educational point across to them all. But as we've seen in the last year and a half now, that the defunding the police mantra in the discussion has worked. Not only have they defunded the law enforcement sectors, but now more and more cops are deciding to go into the private sector and leave their law enforcement gigs, and that leaves us with a big hole. So response times for a fight, if it was called in, a fight at a graduation party, that gets rung down to the bottom of the list when you have the carjackings and the robberies and stuff like that. So when the situation escalates with a person who carries, that's when things get serious. That's when things get out of hand. And then, the cops aren't even near because they're dealing with other things that already hit the top of the list. So a lot of things probably played into this. Probably, the stepfather not putting words in his mouth or what his actions were based off of, but probably might have been under the assumption that he didn't care to call the police at all. Said, I have a gun, I can handle this situation on my own. And well, it turns out that he couldn't. So I think there's going to be a lot of charges, and we're going to see the outcome of what might have started with good intentions turned very bad. So, and that's the thing that we teach as instructors is no matter how nice you are before you start carrying a gun, the nicer you have to be when you start carrying it, because you are no matter what looked at as the agitator. You are the one with the weapon, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. But in this scenario, training just didn't get through. But then again, we should wait for the entire story, the entire investigation, to see what occurred.
Not to split hairs, but do we know the guy had a permit? Has he had any training?
I don't know.
No clue.
Okay, so he may not even be a permitted carrier.
I think they would have said that if he didn't, but the whole thing was, in most cases, I think they would have keyed in on that as, he wasn't a permit holder. So, but we don't know what kind of information they're not passing along with the ongoing investigation.
Right. And so I think you made really solid points there, Jason. And I didn't bring it up from the aspect of as a permits carry holder, you can't do it, but more of as these are things you can't do. And to your point, what we talk about in class, which is, however nice you were, you are now the person that brought a deadly weapon to an altercation. Whether you have a permit to carry or not, that still holds true. You have more culpability and more ownership as a permit to carry holder. You are expected to retreat. You are expected to do the right thing. You don't get to argue. You don't get to flip people off in traffic, right? I think you made some solid points there. And I agree. We need to let this play out. We need to see where it goes on the face of it, how it's been reported, and we know that media can report however they so choose. I
think it's clear, but just to state, we're speculating. We're not rendering opinions here because we know we don't have all the facts. We're just saying, based on what we've heard, we're thinking this, we're guessing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's something that everybody should be aware of and cognizant of. It's just that.
But it certainly does bring up good teaching points based on what we know here. This went wrong, and
don't do drive-by shootings.
It specifically says that in our PowerPoint in the class, so we know it from our student.
It actually does. It also says that you can't shoot up public transit facilities, which I'm sorry. I'd like to shoot up a bus stop. No, I'm joking. I wouldn't like to do that. I don't need this to be played at my trial eventually. No, so it's all, I don't know. It's just.
And again, I don't know that this is necessarily what happened, but one of the things that I say in class too is you've just got to stop letting pride and ego make your decisions.
True.
You need to start using logic and rational thought, and sometimes tucking tail and leaving is the right call, but pride and ego don't like that option.
Yeah. I think, I don't know what I think. I think everybody's got different life experiences, and I think everybody is raised differently. But you need to understand the ramifications of your decisions, and you need to understand and be taught some critical decision-making processes. So I was going to say, I lost my train of thought, damn it. So I don't want to go deep into the defund the police. You made some points about the police are going to prioritize their calls the way they need to because they are currently understaffed, and they are currently, Minneapolis is, a couple months ago we talked about it, 700% increase in carjackings.
I mean, I work a lot with St. Paul PD. While they haven't been a fixture in most of these cases that we've had in Minneapolis, they feel it as well. Where we would hook somebody up for trespassing, they would be there in 15, 20 minutes. Now we hook them up, trespass them, and tell them to walk because we know it's going to be 2 hours before anything really occurs. And it's and like I said, it's not because they don't have money to pay for the cops. It's because more and more law enforcement are just choosing not to get into situations. They don't deal with what's happening and not justifying anything that's occurred, but just they don't want their actions to be misconstrued as something negative. So they're like, I'm just going to find something else to do.
Yeah. So I mean, and I don't fault anybody who chooses to leave the force at this point because they're in a very much a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Jim, do you remember we kind of shared a story, me, you, and AJ, in chat about the numbers on Minneapolis law enforcement, how many open positions they had? It was a significant portion.
I want to say the number was something like 900 is fully staffed, and they were at like 80%.
Yeah, which
I mean they're short 160, 170 officers, is what I remember.
Yeah, and I think I remember being struck by, like, for a city the size of Minneapolis, I didn't think fully staffed was enough police, to be honest. So
yeah, I mean, New York City has 35,000 officers, and we have less than 1,000 in Minneapolis. It does seem like we should have more.
I think New York City's got, their police force is probably larger than some countries' freaking military. So,
well, but is New York City 35 times the size of Minneapolis? I don't think it is.
No. I don't know. I wouldn't fault anybody for not choosing to be a police officer or for leaving the force, which is unfortunate. And I don't want to speak ill or critical. And like Jason said, I'm not passing judgment on anything that's been done in the past. I do think there are some issues to be addressed, but I think we're going the wrong way in limiting limiting some of the things they can do, limiting their interactions, and taking away training money. Like, they need to be provided more training. They need to be provided, and I'm not talking firearms training. I'm talking the whole gamut, right? We need to be teaching them everything they can, especially how to handle stressful situations, because we can all second guess and freaking Monday morning quarterback situations. It's I wouldn't have done that. And how could you do that dumb thing? Like, you're not there. You're not getting the stress. I talk about, like, the emotion, or not the emotion, but the chemical dump in the most stressful situation of your life a lot, right? And so you're going to have auditory exclusions. You're going to have loss of fine and gross motor skill. Like, you're not going to function well unless you've trained extensively, repeatedly, numerous times, so that it is true muscle memory. You don't know what you're going to do in the situation. You don't know how you're going to react in that situation. I see a kid in the back.
I would say we have another special guest joining us.
Can you say hi? Okay. And I just looked up. There's 14 million more people in New York than in Minnesota.
That's
significant. Just a wee bit bigger.
That's right, but it's not 35 times bigger. It's like 5 times bigger. So why didn't they 35 times the police officers? Anyway, But yeah, another thing that I talk about too, I what I don't like is legislation that is based on an emotional reaction to something. I mean, I'm not going to talk about any specific incident, but I think we can all agree there's probably been at least a couple incidents in recent history nationwide where we can look at something a police officer did and say, whoops, that wasn't the right thing. And, the answer is not pull money away from them. We need to sit back and analyze, well, what is it that we actually expect the police to do? And what do we have to do to get there? And the answer, as you guys have already said, is probably more money, not less.
Yeah, so I'm trying to walk a fine line of not speaking critical of anybody who might be becoming a police officer now in Minneapolis, right? Like, I don't want to sound critical of them, but when we do the things we've done, we've passed the laws we've passed, we allow the court of public opinion to convict people, you're not getting the same caliber of applicants that you were getting before. You need
my
to provide.
understanding is that the last recruiting drive for the Minneapolis Police Department resulted in no recruits.
Oof.
Literally no one applied. No one wants to work for the Minneapolis Police Department.
So how does a city recover from that?
I don't know, because I think we're in new territory. I don't think that's happened before to have the precedent to know how to deal with it. But I mean, I've said this before, you can look at any profession, any vocation, any trade. There's going to be good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's because they're made of humans, and humans are sometimes good and sometimes bad. But I mean, the level of protection that we as parents offer our children is the same level of protection that police officers offer to total strangers known as the general public. I was watching a video just today of a police chase in Arkansas that it was this year, and an Arkansas State police officer at 109 miles an hour executed a pit maneuver on a pickup truck and ended up launching himself in the air, rolling over on his back. I mean, that officer basically volunteered to die in order to protect everybody else on the road from this obvious menace in a 5,000-pound pickup truck. I can't find myself just being instantly critical of a group that does that. If they make
I'm gonna take a counter.
We got to deal with it. But
I'm gonna take counterpoint to you here. Hang on. I also watched a video out of Arkansas today of a police officer involved in a pit maneuver. However, he felt the pregnant woman in the vehicle, which he didn't know she was pregnant, wasn't pulling over soon enough, so he pitted her and rolled her vehicle. She put her flashers on. She was moving over.
Case, I've watched that same video, and in that case, I would say that officer was wrong. I mean, they actually showed the text of the Arkansas State driver's manual that literally said what she was doing was the proper procedure. Yeah. I mean, she literally was following the letter of the law. Yes, that officer screwed up.
So going back to what you said earlier, like there's some bad apples. Absolutely. We all know that. Like, that's not anything like anybody's bashful about. And I don't want to get into a qualified immunity conversation because I don't know how I feel about that 100% honestly. But the example I use is the Philando Castile shooting, where all we have is audio of the interaction between Philando Castile and Geronimo Yanez, the officer, and in my opinion, they are both in the wrong. More training on the part of the police department could have prevented that situation. You can't train the public in that situation. You can only train and provide additional resources for the police. I'm not.
Sorry. Do you think more transparency on training would be more beneficial to the civilian life meaning this is what all officers are trained on. And I only say that because I run a security department, and that is what we're pushing for. Is we want all of our members to understand what security is doing and what steps we are in if we are going into a certain situation. So I'm more of the idea of more money, but also train the public on what we're training law enforcement, so they know, okay, they pitted somebody because they didn't pull over the last 5 minutes and they were acting aggressively, or they're putting cuffs on somebody and I can tell that that's an agitated person, and I see their training dictates. I think that's what we need more of, so people can stop freaking out over because no matter what, a cop pulls over anywhere in Minnesota right now, and there's 5 cameras on them. No, it could be a speeding ticket, but somebody's stopping their phones out and saying, well, "What are you doing? What are you getting into the faces?" But I think more transparency of the training and the backgrounds of every officer. Where it's like, hey, here's the entire video. Watch a cadet go through, all of the training that they do, and here's the exam, and it doesn't have to be the current exam, but this is what they do. This is how they're trained. So take that how you will, and try to make it's more education needed for the public and the law enforcement in my mind.
I agree. And another thing that I think is helpful is, just go look at YouTube. Look at all the times an officer is involved in a shooting and how little time they have to react. Minuscule fractions of a second are the difference between them living and dying. You can't put yourself in a situation like that if you haven't been in one to know how you're going to react. And again, I'm not all necessarily for qualified immunity, but I do like the idea of a little bit of benefit of the doubt, just because these guys are stepping up and putting themselves into situations that the average person shouldn't have to be in the first place.
So I think Jason hit on something I think is key, and you said training the public, and that's what needs to happen. They need to understand. They've not outlawed, but they've banned certain types of training for police officers, which I think, and Jason, you might know the name of that type of training, which it's recognizing the people, they call it fear-based. The anti-police crowd calls it fear-based training, but it's where you recognize the people who are agitated, who are likely to be a threat, and you key in on them. And I think that we're losing that PR battle in that respect. So training the public, I think, is huge. I think transparency is huge. Because
and I definitely think it would help, but I think I might have a less optimistic view of the public in general than you guys do, to think that there's, in my mind, a large number of people out there who are just going to continue to run on, emotion and indignancy, and it doesn't matter. So I'm not sure what the answer is. You guys are proposing things that I think would help, but I'm not as convinced that they're going to be as helpful, I think, as you guys are. That doesn't mean don't do them. I just think it means there are still a lot of other things that we need to come up with in a logical, rational, not emotional state when we do it. You run on emotion and you get documents like the Patriot Act. Bad idea.
And that, going to the transparency, that's why, people like, why'd they shoot? Like, look at the shoot, don't shoot, news articles and stuff, or the videos, and you'll see. You can go to any range that has a projection screen and go through their virtual reality kind of training just to see how it is, to see how quick you react, or what would you do if you react. And you're right, we can't rule the world based off of emotions. We have to go through and make sure that what we're doing now is good for 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, or we'd be in the same spot we are right now, where we're going through old laws and old regulations that were not equitable. So we're not learning from our history; we're repeating it, and that's because we're human beings and we're dealing with a lot of emotions. So it's defund, defund, defund. Well, okay, well we did that, and now you're saying, where's the police? Where's the police? Where's the police? Where's the training? Well, we can't do that because we don't have money for it. So we're going through history at warp speed. We're running into the issues that we're creating ourselves 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's a circle. It's a vicious circle. The first thing to go is security budgets, law enforcement budgets, and then cleaning budgets. So soon enough, cleaning's going to take a hit. Minnesota or Minneapolis and St. Paul is going to look like the dirty streets in New York and California because they're cutting the budget to feed for the law enforcement. Well, we don't have cops either. So it's a big circle. And I think transparency, I love how quick a lot of these law enforcement areas are just releasing the body cam footage saying, here you go. This is what happened. Without an investigation going on and just showing the people this is what we're reviewing, and yes, some of it is very horrible what these videos are showing, and right away you can see it's like, yeah, they look pretty guilty as hell, or you're like, what are we trying to see here? I mean, I see a law enforcement officer trying to make a stop and get somebody out of the car, and they're pulling out a gun. Yet we only see what we want to see. So like I could watch the same video and 10 other people could watch it and not see the exact same thing. But that's where the transparency, full circle now, the transparency comes into it is I see the training, I know the training. A civilian that watched, Blue Bloods last night would be like, well, that's not the right thing to do.
You hit on a few points, but really the see what you want to see part. I think there is a large portion of our population that have been conditioned to see things the way they've been, not that they want to see it, but the way they've been told to see it. And I think that is part of that problem that Jim, that you spoke of you have less faith in our population. So I think we're on the pendulum swing to one side. And it's going to take some time. Unfortunately, it's going to cost more lives and more money before that pendulum swings back to the other side, where we are looking for the law enforcement. And we are going to put that money back into, and we're going to say, hey, you know what? All those qualified immunity laws we revoked. We need to look at those. We need to bring these police officers back in. We need to incentivize people to protect and serve. So
yeah, I mean, different circumstances, so the time frame doesn't necessarily apply. But I mean, 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, 9/11 comes and I mean, we are celebrating police officers. 20 years later, we're condemning them. Yeah. So there's your pendulum. It has swung from one side to the other here in 20 years.
Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate to have to go through it, and as Jason said, we're going to start repeating history, and it's going to be a cyclical thing. We got deep there, guys, but we're coming up on close to an hour. I don't know if Jason expected to get that deep here tonight, so I think we should probably end it there. I think that's a good spot. I think we're in agreement. I think we had a good conversation. I don't know. We'll see where we're at in 2 weeks, Jason. I'd love it if you joined us again. I thought it was a really good conversation. I think a little more in depth than we normally get too. So
yeah, I'll even start on time next time.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exactly.
Hey, we know you're at the control of Bill Gates here. It was out of your hands.
Yeah, we're not a rules and regulations organization. So.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I appreciate you joining me tonight. Thank you very much. Hopefully, we'll see you both in 2 weeks. And everybody else, if you haven't already done so, we'd appreciate a subscribe and a like. You can find us anywhere, right? You can find us YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere you listen to a podcast. So everybody, have a good night and thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.